things I'm learning tonight. Okay.
Oh, I think we're live.
Let's see.
I think because it says that we're live.
Let's see if we're live. If we're live, yes, we are. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Is there a way for me to see comments from people?
So I have to look at them on my phone. You have to look
okay.
too. Yeah, when you go live via Zoom, you got to do it over your phone.
Okay.
Yeah. So hello, everyone.
Hi.
We're going to take a couple minutes here to let people jump on. Welcome to Mastering Chronic Illness. We're very happy that you're here.
Woo. Yeah, so happy.
All right. I'm going to start sharing out. Are you as well, Daisy?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not letting me share out.
Really? Let me see.
Anyway, I'll do comments, you do shares. How about that?
that works.
All right, that sounds good. We'll work together here. All right, so everybody, welcome to Mastering Chronic Illness. This is something that has been a long time coming for Daisy and I. We have talked several times about doing this live and bringing it forward. We actually did a live a while ago on chronic illness, and it was just such a hit. Everybody was really intrigued with what we brought forward, and they really wanted to stay on longer and to ask more questions and all of that. And so we wanted to put something together that would really help provide a guide and a deeper level of understanding around chronic illness. So my name's Laura Mazzotta, and I am the Akashic therapist, which means that I've been a therapist for almost 20 years now, and got very sick about 4 years ago and started looking into alternative healing modalities. And there were several that I loved. The Akashic records blew me away, which is why I've transitioned a lot of my work to the Akashic records, because I found it to be a much deeper, efficient, and effective level of healing. And it has absolutely blown my mind with what it's brought forward in terms of healing from my own physical illness, and helped me as a byproduct with anxiety and confidence and energy, everything else that you can think of. So of course I got to the point where I said, it feels irresponsible for me to not share this with the world, because it's such a brilliant gift. And if I knew nothing about it, I'm sure there's a lot of other people who don't know about it. So we wanted to introduce our stories and talk to you about also what's going on in your lives that we can help guide you in. So Daisy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So for those that you don't know me, I'm Daisy, and I work as a psychic medium, an intuitive counselor, and a healer. And like Laura, actually, with my story, it began with a lot of addiction and mental illness struggle that I dealt with for years. And I had no idea that I would ever end up doing something like this. And I mean, there's also one of the main reasons that I'm so inspired to be doing this work with Laura and what we've just been talking about, because that's truly what led me into this work. And I know that there's no kind of way that would have happened if I didn't go through that. And that's why at this point in my life, I'm so grateful for all of that, which I definitely would not have said years ago. But basically my whole struggle with healing from addiction and mental illness has brought me all the amazing gifts of being able to work as a medium and help other people, and to help show them that those darker areas of their lives or those things that they're struggling with can truly be this key to enlightenment, this key to empowering themselves. And it's something that I've already tried to really bring to as many clients as I can. And that's just why I think me and Laura just share so much of that kind of stuff together. And that's why I think we're so excited to try to share this in a bigger way and in a more kind of structured way to help people get guided through in this with their handheld, and to show them that they're not alone, and that also it really is a possible thing. I just think, unfortunately, there's so much out there where I think, and we had talked about this, I think, on our other live, where there's so many groups out there for support, and they can be great, but sometimes they can also just make it seem worse, or can be more negative, because it's kind of like this collective suffering in a way. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the intention of a lot of that stuff, but sometimes there's not enough of like the solution out there, as opposed to sometimes I think all just feeling really stuck together. And so that's why I just think trying to get this message out as much as we can is really something I really wanted to do. So very excited to be here.
And I think also that both you and I, when we entered this process, if you will, I don't know. I mean, were you skeptical? Were you hesitant?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I know.
Absolutely.
You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, I was hesitant, but my drive to look into it was greater than my hesitation.
Mhm.
And thank goodness,
Yeah.
because for me, it wasn't evidence-based. It wasn't data-driven. And
Mhm.
so I was like, is this just a bunch of BS?
Right.
And I was I had exhausted every single specialist you can imagine in
Yeah.
the medical world. And there was just that knowing, that clear cognizance, right? Which is that clear knowing, that intuitive ability where I was just, and I hadn't taken a bunch of time developing my intuition at the time, but I knew that this wasn't my future. And thank goodness I listened to that
Yeah.
and just said, I'm just going to look. And even though, I mean, I'd be on calls with these people who were just waving their hands around. And I'm like,
Yep.
what did I sign up for?
Yeah.
Crazy is how amazing I felt
Yeah.
afterward, you know?
Mhm.
So, and that's what kept me coming back to it were the results, and my husband even saw the results and was like, wow, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. So I know we've talked about on our last live, we talked a little bit about our journeys,
Mhm.
but why don't we just give a brief overview of like, all right, what have we been through in the medical community generally? And then what have we tried in the energetic and spiritual and holistic, really?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You want me to go first?
Sure, go
All
for it.
right. All right. Well, so as far, because I'll try to summarize it. I mean, obviously I could talk for 80 hours, but basically, as far as like my addiction and mental illness, I will tell you right now, I basically have gone to every psychiatrist under the sun. I've been on every psych med you could ever imagine. I've been inpatient in mental hospitals even when I was really young. And I went to all these different group therapies. I had a million different therapists. I did every single thing that you're told to do when it comes to mental illness. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was pretty young. And I was actually put on antidepressants for the first time when I was 13. And I have been going to doctors ever since then. And it never helped me. It didn't really help me for years. And I mean, I think ultimately, especially with mental illness too, though, I didn't necessarily want the help, I think, at the time. And also the way it was introduced to me, I just saw it as almost just hurting me more, or it just didn't feel right to me. And I think the thing was that I had to go through what I did when it came to addiction, which got much worse when I was older. And again, I was still going to doctors at that time and going to therapists, but I'd be lying to them about everything that I was doing. And really, I needed to hit bottom in order to actually want the help. So it was a little different as far as just the process, I think, as far as like my physical illness has been, where it was kind of this thing where I had to surrender to the help. But then also, it took a while after surrendering to actually know what to look for help that actually worked. Because after I had surrendered, I found AA, which was obviously, a godsend for me. And that's what got me started. And I think that's the thing that actually it really did kind of automatically introduce a spiritual lifestyle in a way that was maybe a little more subtle, or in a way that I didn't realize at the time, because I was basically an atheist when I was younger. And I was very like anti like church, anti anything like that, or spiritual. Like I was into, psychic stuff or ghosts like when I was younger, but I just never really thought of that as being a part of my life, or even something that could help me. And that was really actually what started that whole thing. It kind of planted that seed for me. And it wasn't until I had 2 years sober that I actually started being introduced to mediumship. And it kind of came out of nowhere, and actually kind of came out of one of like the darkest times in my life, which again, I think that's just why I get so passionate about showing people this stuff, that those can be those kinds of opportunities for you. And it can be hard to see that sometimes, but I've been really lucky in just everything that I've gone through and the people that I've had supporting me to be able to see. But really also it's just from spirit in general. That's what has shown me like, oh my God, I had no idea I had this whole other realm to explore and to be empowered by, be lifted by, because I had already made so much progress and felt so good. And then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, there was this whole piece that had been missing all along. And it just took everything to this other level that was just like mind blowing for me. And it wasn't until it was around that time actually that I got sick with fibromyalgia, which I was just diagnosed with only actually about 3 months ago. But I've been dealing with symptoms for about like 5 years actually. And as far as that goes, I mean, I've been to every specialist under the sun. I just like Laura, and had a million tests done and went through the whole thing of like not knowing what I had for a very long period of time, constantly worrying about it. And often even having people tell me that I'm like basically crazy, you know, and just kind of dismissing me, which is really unfortunate, especially about like chronic illness. I think it's such a big thing in the medical field where a lot of doctors kind of just see you as like a hypochondriac or like you're complaining. And it's very discouraging to begin with because it's exhausting. It's exhausting. But I think where I was really lucky was just the sense that I had already established that connection. And again, I don't think that was, you know, a coincidence I mean, that was really meant to be where I had already had that connection with spirit when this started. And so I was able to know that that was there and have that guide me. So I definitely went through a lot with trying to figure out diagnosis, trying to get through it, really suffering from all of this, going on medications that made me feel awful and all kinds of stuff. And also just feeling really helpless and feeling very trapped, feeling like I can't really go anywhere and that my body is just kind of, I feel trapped in it. And it wasn't until I finally was just like, okay, what I've already learned, I know that I can apply that to this. And it's just something that I needed to listen to more. And I think that was the other thing, was that I had done so much healing work on myself at a soul level, and that was great. But I have a whole history with an eating disorder and just like self-abuse and all of that stuff with my physical body. And I really know that fibromyalgia was spirit really trying to tell me, hey, you still need to pay attention to this. Like you can't just heal one layer of yourself if you want to get to a certain place here. So I finally, luckily already having that there, I was able to realize and see that this was an invitation, if anything, to be like, hey, we just want to help you get to a better place, to be able to help people more. And this is what we think you need to focus on. And instead of fighting that, it's really so much more about just aligning with it and seeing it as a gift and seeing it as a tool, like your body is a tool to be guided by spirit. So yeah, so I mean, that's basically where I'm at now. And it's just something that is an everyday process. You know, it's always up and down. It's kind of going with this whole unpredictability of a chronic illness. Mm-hmm. And it's really learning to kind of ride with it and use it as this internal compass, as opposed to something that feels like it's going against you and not working with you, which I went through for a long time. So yeah.
Well, and I love how you just use the word invitation. Mm-hmm. It's true. We are actually invited to co-create this life with our physical bodies and with our illness, in addition to our energy and our spirit. But it is an invitation. And I tell clients all the time, it's a cue, it's information. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to look at that. And the other couple of things that you mentioned were, you know, feeling trapped. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt super trapped. Mm-hmm. I felt trapped in my body. I felt trapped in the medical community. I felt trapped between all these doctors, different opinions.
Yeah, right.
And I felt trapped, and I felt really alone because it was yeah. And although my husband's super supportive and he was wonderful about tuning into my symptoms, he wasn't feeling the pain. He wasn't feeling the sickness and the dizziness and the nausea and all of that, you know? So there was that piece of feeling trapped and realizing that trapped was an illusion. It was being stuck in my own head and being trapped in my mindset about what was possible. And that's why, because I was so used to, well, the doctor says this, you show up at the appointment, you're a good girl, and you show up at the appointment on time, and you make sure you listen and do everything they say. And so when it came to the point that I was like, wait, I'm not going to go by doctor's orders. Right. I'm going to go based on what my body's telling me. Yeah. I felt like a rebel.
Yeah, right.
I felt like such a rebel. Yeah. But I also knew very strongly what my body was telling me, you know?
Right.
And one of the reasons that we're both so passionate about doing this is because we want you guys to be able to be preventive if you can, right? Because Daisy talked earlier about kind of hitting bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I hit bottom too. Prior to hitting bottom though, I was doing great. My life was going great. I was happy. I was fit. I was great.
Mm-hmm.
But I was stubborn as hell. And I was very, very fixated on my work. And I love what I do, but I was trying to do too much. Right? I have 3 children, and I was doing too much, and I was listening to the universe, but not enough. And if I hadn't gotten knocked down that hard, I wouldn't have listened. So that's the other thing. And this whole world I would have been like, that's not for me. No way.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Totally.
Exactly. And so I think that for us, it's trying to raise awareness and to be able to heighten awareness of truly the magic of the universe, truly the magic and miracles that can occur. And that it starts with shifting your mindset, right? So, and I talked about this on my live yesterday when I was talking about diagnosis, that there's different layers to our energy body.
Yep.
And the closest one to us is our etheric. Then we have emotional, and then we have mental, which means that, and there's more layers after that, but I'm not going to keep
right.
Anyway, so it goes through our mental before it gets to our emotional and our physical, which means that our mental capacity and our interpretation and our belief system around the energy that's coming toward us is filtering, right? Our mind is filtering everything.
Oh yeah.
And so and that's when our emotions and our physical symptoms come up. So if we start to shift our mindset first and foremost, we're going to have a greater impact on it not coming up as emotional symptoms or physical symptoms.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think for me, that was one of the biggest shifts that I made, which seems really simple. But again, that's the thing. I think it's so easy to see it as this impossible task, but it's just shifting your focus to something. And I think for me, again, it's just like, instead of reacting to a new symptom or something as my body attacking me and like, oh no, what does this mean? What do I have to do? Now I need to go, do I need to call my doctor? Do I need to take this? Do I need to do, and like freaking out, instead having it just be like, hey, thank you for telling me that. Now I can do something here, and that was such a huge thing for me because because I think that's the thing, that was such a pattern. And that's where also I, relate with you as well. It's just, I was also really stubborn and a workaholic. And for me, I did a lot of healing on myself overall with the addiction and everything, but I put myself through so much after that, even though I was healthy, I was doing good, I was working full time, I was taking care of other people way too much. I was so absorbed in other people's stuff. And because I was a healer, I didn't know it at the time. Because again, that was like kind of my way of seeing that. But I was doing it way too much. I was overexpending my energy, and my body was like, hey, not good. Like, that's not going to work for me anymore, and actually paying attention to it and caring enough to be like, okay, right. All right.
Well, and you know what else just came up while you were talking about that was having faith in our bodies.
Yeah,
and having faith in our ability to move forward.
Oh yeah.
I didn't have any faith in my body.
Me either.
I felt, I felt betrayed.
Yeah, me too.
Betrayed by my body. I felt like a victim. And what I see now, which would have been very helpful in hindsight, but would I have listened at the time? Not sure.
Right. Right.
But I look back on it and I'm like, you know what? If I had just said when I was laying there shaking and waiting for the ambulance the third time, if I had, instead of going to, oh my gosh, what's happening? Do I still have sex? Am I dying? Is this the end? This is the third time this keeps happening. I'm not getting better. And I also just blamed. I got pissed at the doctors. I just blamed them. I'm like, it's their fault. They're not taking care of me. They said this would work and it's not working. And if I had focused more on, you're going to be totally fine. Like the ability that you have, the power that you have to shift this in yourself right now in this moment exists. And I didn't know that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think that's the other thing with Western medicine, that it, that really unfortunately that helps support that idea that it's outside of us, unfortunately. That's just a lot. There are obviously some fabulous doctors out there that thankfully do think outside of that realm. But the majority, which I dealt with too, is just they don't really want to pay attention to the other options. I've had many doctors where it's just like, even if I try bringing up, like, what about my diet or yoga, meditate, if I try to like think of anything outside of just medication, they just don't even want to hear it really. And they're just like, no, I want to prescribe you this and send you on your way, basically.
Yeah. And what has your experience been with medication? Because I thought that was something that we should talk about too, because I mean, we have a mixed experience with that. So why don't you share? Well, I'll share mine since you shared last first time.
Go for it.
Okay. So for me, I do plasma infusions every week now because I've been diagnosed with something called CVID, common variable immunodeficiency, which means that I do not have enough, I don't have certain blood proteins. We have four, maybe more blood proteins. Right. In our blood to fight infection, and they make up our immune system. And so one of those blood proteins, actually a few of them, I do not have. And so I do plasma infusions every week to put those proteins back into my system so that I can fight infection. Now, it's not a cure-all. It doesn't fight viruses. It only fights bacteria. But so this is blood plasma, but it's also considered a medication, right? And this is necessary for me now. The doctors say that it's something I'm going to have to take for the rest of my life. I no longer believe that because I do believe in the power of us shifting, not our DNA, but the expression of our DNA. I've seen it happen several times. I know it's possible. I've seen it happen with this work that we're doing. And I believe that I will grow into a different version of who I am now. Yeah. So I still do the plasma infusions for now, but I also know very confidently that I'm going to move to a different space with that. And I've also taken a little bit of medication at other times for my cognitive dysfunction because my neurological system was damaged by the sepsis 4 years ago. Right. So I now have something called autonomic neuropathy, which just creates a lot of pain, but it also, the autonomic nerves run your digestive system and they run your breathing and your heart rate. So it can create some shortness of breath and things like that there. It's lovely. But that is something that has resolved enormously over time, and that the doctor said that I was just going to decompensate with. And I've had to cut back on my work, and I had to close my physical office even before COVID because my cognitive dysfunction was I couldn't make words, I couldn't create sentences, I couldn't understand what people were saying to me, and it scared the crap out of me. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so, but everybody just handed me drugs. Here, take this, take. And I just said, no. I'm like, no. And the reason I said no is not because I was, again, being stubborn. It was because for me, I had been through the ringer. And so I've always known my physical body very well, but I was even more intimately connected with my physical body and its cues. And I said, I want to know my cues. And if I'm and it's not that I was punishing myself. It's not that I didn't want to get better, but I thought, if I'm taking this and I'm still having this dysfunction underneath and I don't feel it, to listen to my body and rest when I need to, or eat this when I need to, or whatever, then I don't feel like I'm serving myself well. Right. You know, I felt like it would help, but it would be a mask. Yeah. And for me, I felt like it's good, but it's temporary. And this was something that I was told I was going to have for the rest of my life. And if I had believed that, then taking the medication made sense. Because I, all right, I'm taking this for the rest of my life. And even now with my infusions, I'm like, all right, well, taking this makes sense right now, but it's not going to make sense forever. Right. And that we get to decide that. And that's one of the biggest things we want to drive home too, is you are the owner of your physical body. You are the owner of your emotions. You are the owner of your energy. And listening to that first and foremost above anything else is your greatest guide. And that's why we're so passionate about helping people build their intuition so that they do have greater clarity and confidence in the messages from their physical body and from their energy field and from their emotions, to be able to say, I know how to tweak things before it turns into that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, well, exactly. And also because, I mean, with doctors especially, sometimes it can be very intimidating or difficult. Doctors can get very defensive when want to question medication. It's happened to me a bunch of times. And even also like before I had a diagnosis, unfortunately with me, I have a whole medical record that says addiction, eating disorder, mental illness, and they'll read that first. And then I had many doctors just say, well, that's what it's from, and I knew, and I was able to trust myself and be like, okay, no, I know it's not in my head. I know that it's a real thing that's happening to me. But again, that's the thing. It's just you being able to build that confidence within yourself to know that you don't need to have someone dictate or tell you what your body is saying, because they don't know. They don't know. They could be the smartest freaking doctor in the world, but
every single one of us is unique. Like every single one of us has a different unique pattern, energetic blueprint, DNA pattern, etc. And so you have no idea whether you're going to react to a medication differently than somebody else, or whether you have the propensity to move forward or not. You have no idea. None of us have a microscope that specific to give us the exact blueprint of every single one of us. The closest I've gotten to is the Akashic records, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly.
My unique purpose and like blueprint is for being here. And prior to that, it was just kind of like a crapshoot.
Right. And that gets exhausting too, when it's just kind of, let's see what this does to you, and it's just, I mean, and that's what I was dealing with kind of recently too. And I even had certain doctors, I mean, really almost arguing with me because I wanted to go off of a certain med that I was on. And they just were saying, there's no way that it'd be causing these symptoms for you. I've never heard of that before. I've never seen that before. And I just had to say, like, okay, I'm not saying that it's a common thing, but I just really feel that that's what might be happening with me. So I'd like to just go off of it, please. I don't need to like try to shove my opinion down anyone's throat, but it's just, I need to stand by what I feel and just trust that. And thank God I did, because if I just let doctors give me, whatever they're saying, I'd be on like probably 10 medications right now.
Oh, me too.
I would,
medication. And that's the other piece too, is like, I love that you brought that up, that having a voice, right?
Yeah.
Being advocates for ourselves. And for so long, I wouldn't go to any appointments without my husband, because first of all, I was like a total space cadet. I mean, I was like a zombie, and I was like, what, half the time. But so I did need his help at the beginning.
Sure.
I'm not encouraging you to not get assistance and have somebody advocate for you. But I also want you to use that as a temporary crutch until you're able to use your own voice, because that's the other piece that we want to come here live and talk about, is being your own advocate and opening your mouth. And I remember, I'll never forget, when I went in, it was right after I had sepsis. And they wanted me to go to see this neurologist right away. So they sent me over to him, and I'm literally, my whole body's convulsing because the rigors is something that comes with sepsis. Your whole body shakes all the time. So I did that for weeks. And so I come in and I'm shaking, and he's like, oh, honey, this is a byproduct of anxiety. I'm like, dude, I was just started with sepsis. So he gives me an Xanax prescription. And I'm like, well, thank you very much, but I'm not going to take that. And like literally hours later, I was in the ER and they tested my levels. They're like, you're still septic. I'm like, exactly.
Right.
It's not a panic attack. It's unbelievable. And so being able to talk openly with the doctors, that's a hard thing, right? Like authentically showing up with a doctor and just speaking boldly to them, because they feel like it's an ego challenge a lot of the time. And I don't want to say this across the board, because there have been a handful of doctors, only a handful, sadly, but a handful of doctors that I've seen out of the hundreds I've seen that are absolutely phenomenal. They look into you, they work with you, and then we co-create together. That's the whole point, right? You co-create, you have a relationship. And that's why I love the Akashic records too, because we're co-creating with the universe and with the universal energy, and that we are very valuable, vital components of our own healing.
I mean, we need to trust what we're feeling, because I think so many people, if you just shut that down completely and allow any specialist to do whatever they want to do to you, who knows what could possibly be the alternative to that, if you really decided to look at that. And unfortunately, I think so many people don't even see that that's a possibility or something real.
Well, and it was funny because like the pulmonologist told me, he was like, oh, you need to do this exercise test. I'm like, I can't do an exercise test.
Yeah.
I will be in the hospital. He's like, no, you need to go do that. And I had just done this other scan for him, and then I didn't do the CAT scan because I'd already been exposed to radiation, and he was pissed at me because I didn't get it done. And so, you know, he was like, you need to go get this test done. So he was forcing it. My husband was like, you can't do that. I was like, I know, but he says like, it's guaranteed and blah, blah, blah. So I go to do this test. What happens on the test? The doctor comes in to run this test.
Yeah.
I start to convulse. My blood pressure drops to like nothing. And he's like, oh my God, we need an ambulance. He's like dragging me off of the bike that they had me on this exercise, dragging me off of it, throws me in. I went back into the hospital. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I knew that was going to happen. And I tried to shift my mindset. You know, I really tried to shift my mindset around it. And I was actually looking forward to it, to be honest with you. I wanted to do it because I hadn't moved my body in so long. And I want to move my body. And this is actually the best place to determine whether or not I can. And but holy crap. I mean, yeah. It's special.
I mean, that's that's so true. I mean, every time, because even for me, like every time I've gone against what my intuition is telling me, it basically always screws me over. Pretty much every single time. And that even goes for like the medication. And I think that's the other thing, especially when you're starting out with this stuff. I think you just want somebody to kind of take over and be like, okay, yeah, you just tell me what's right and just do it. Because you just feel so kind of helpless and you don't feel like you can trust yourself because your body becomes this enemy. And that's definitely what I was dealing with too. But it's just, that's where that shift can happen. Because again, like I was just saying, you don't even know what's going to happen if you just let doctors do whatever. And I think also for me, like as a kid, I went to doctors a lot and I had growth hormone deficiency as a child. So going to specialists, going to doctors, that was such a big part of my life. And I think for a long time, I was kind of just taught to trust them all the time because of that as well. So I think it was just this multi-layered process of realizing like, hey, I do have a choice. I do have an option to like kind of reassess here. And even how like I think sometimes it's like considered an insult if you say that you want to get a second opinion or you know, God forbid you say that you want a second opinion, you know. But I was finally, you know, I was able to say that to my doctor the other day and I was like, you know, whatever, I'm not trying to insult you, I'm not saying that, but I think it's, why wouldn't I want more just coverage if I can get it? Like,
one of my neurologists, he sent me down to the city because he was like, it would be so silly for you to not go to New York City. We're an hour away. Silly for you to not go down there because they're #1 internationally at Mount Sinai for immunological research. So he's like, go down there. It would be silly for you not to. And thank God I did because they're a research facility. So they were able to test a lot more specifically and say, oh my gosh, you also don't have B cells and you don't have these cells and you need to get infusions. And I felt much more comfortable under their care. Also long-term thinking, they are a research facility. So they're always going to be on the cutting edge, right? And then when I came back to my other doctor and said, this is what I was going to go forward with, he's like, then why are you even here? Like, he was so pissed at me. And I said, this is not personal. I'm scared out of my mind. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm just trying to make choices that are, you know, in my best interest, you know? But yeah, there can be some ego stuff coming up. So let us know in the comments what experiences you guys have had with your own healing process so far, like where you are in it with doctors, with mental health providers, and let us know kind of what you're experiencing as well. Yes, Jenny says you want someone to take over because you're scared and vulnerable. Exactly. And so that's where the layers come in of this, right? And the spiritual piece, because divine intelligence knows better than anything. And once things have come to a physical symptom, that's the densest level of energy, like I said. So it's already gone through the other energetic layers, which means there's been cues that have come up for us that we haven't necessarily seen or put together in a way that makes sense. So once we're at this physical level, all of those layers are incorporated, right? Now we're experiencing physical symptoms, but we're also like a shit show, right? Like our minds are all confused. Our emotions are a hot mess because we're worried or we're sad about not being able to do certain things. So all of these layers are a part of it. We can even get pissed at God and be, how could you give this to me? How could I deserve this? You know, that kind of mentality. And so it's really important to address all of the layers in your healing, not only in your understanding of your illness, but in your healing process, that by the time it's gotten to the physical, if any one of you have a physical symptom or a chronic illness, or not a chronic illness, but just physical symptoms that are coming up, it's gone through your other layers as well already, which means that you are required to, not required, but for your own sake, I would say, it's recommended that you heal at the physical level, that you heal at the emotional level, that you heal at the spiritual level, that you heal at the mental level, that all of those levels need to be tapped on in order to have well-rounded healing and know that you're presenting as a whole person.
Yeah. And then the more in line all of those layers can be, that just gives you this, again, like this hidden kind of superpower when you're able to align everything in that way. And you get this almost this multi-dimensional kind of communication going on within your own being. And it's awesome. It's so cool when you get to do that.
Thank you for saying that. I said that because you know that totally lit me up, because we are such multidimensional beings. And again, an awareness that I did not have when I first got sick. In fact, I balked at when people suggested it. And so once you realize that we're simply souls having a human experience, then you don't identify so much with, but I am my physical body, so I can't exist or do well or function well if my physical body is not operating correctly, right? And what's correct, first of all, right? Like everybody's body operates differently. But we are meant for wellness. We were created for wellness and joy and appreciation. And so basically what the healing process is about is returning to wellness, right? It's not finding wellness, it's returning to wellness. Because we are meant, you know, our physical body's natural state is wellness. So when you think about that, and you think about, you know, infants that are born with an illness or something, and there's certainly messages and information that's coming forward, not just for their soul, but for the people in their lives. You know, like my illness may not be here entirely for my purpose, you know. It's also here to help my husband with his purpose, and to help my family members and my children with their purpose, and understanding things, you know, and realizing that as souls, before we incarnate into human bodies, we choose what lifetime we're going to come into, so that we choose the lifetime that's going to help us up level our soul to what it needs to be. So remember that when people are born with illnesses or experience really dire illnesses later in life, that it's all a decision that their soul has made. They know what they're signing up for, which is what helps with the victim mentality too.
Which I know, again, because I know that for some people that can be really hard to even take or to hear, you know, that we've chosen this and everything. And like, of course. But the more we're able to, it's just, again, the more we're able to shift it and see that this is a lesson for something. It can show people something that they wouldn't have an opportunity to view, you know, beforehand. And I mean, I think also that's where I was just really grateful for my whole situation with addiction and everything, because that actually, and I understand how it's just blows my mind how the sequence of things and how the universe plays things out in just perfect timing. Even when you're in the middle of something, it doesn't seem like it's perfect timing. It seems like horrible, but in hindsight, it ends up really coming together. And I know for me, like when I went through addiction, and then when I went through these first 2 years of sobriety, and I went through hell with my personal life, and I watched another person go through addiction and get to sobriety. And for me, that was one of the biggest lessons I've ever experienced. And especially also of letting go and trusting that everyone has this path. And the more that we allow that to just happen for them, that's the biggest gift we can give to them also, because we're preventing the lesson when we try to intercept too much. And that was one of the biggest gifts that I ever got. It was one of like the worst things I've ever been through, but
Yeah.
I'm so incredibly grateful for it, because now I have this incredible trust of horrible things. I have this trust and this gratitude when difficult things come up in my life that I never would have had before.
Yeah, because what's the natural response? The natural human response.
Why are you doing this to me? You know, like,
Also,
yeah.
like analyzing it.
Right, right. What did I do? Or, you know, what's wrong with me that, you know, yeah.
Right. And it's going into finding an answer and figuring
Right.
out the agenda and all of that lovely stuff, you know? And really it's the allowing, like you said, like if we sit back and allow, like it's funny, that's when I started feeling better, is when I was like, well, I'm laying here not doing anything. I might as well meditate. And so I started meditating. And then I got to the point where I was like, oh, well, if I don't meditate, like if I missed a day, I wouldn't feel well. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, wow. You know, so when
Right.
I started leaning back and allowing more rather than going into, okay, this doctor said this and this lab says this and this, da, 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 and then judging myself for what I was going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I relaxed, it wellness came forward.
Yeah. It was so much easier.
Yes, it was
So much easier.
yeah. And the other thing that came up while you were talking was PTSD after an event like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want you guys to really, really focus on and hear that part, okay? Because I'm a therapist and I didn't even see that in the moment. How traumatic. This was the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And so not only was I dealing with my physical symptoms, but I had PTSD symptoms. So what does that include? It includes re-experiencing. So I kept re-experiencing this thing in my head, having dreams about it, being hyper vigilant, like I'm always looking around. And this in illness can show up as constantly looking at your symptoms and being like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? And, you know, and so kind of attacking this automatically, because you know from the beginning, if it comes up as a physical symptom, that you're already experiencing the mental and the emotional ones as well.
Yep.
Just dive in, you know, go for the physical adjustment, fine, but then you're also going to want to attend to the mental health piece.
Oh yeah.
Before you think that you need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and if we just try to focus on fixing the physical, again, we're missing the opportunity to look at the other layers. Because again, that's just like, you know, we stick a Band-Aid on it and it's a temporary fix or whatever. Like if we're taking a medication that maybe we don't need or whatever. Again, like I think that some medication, it's good to have and that's okay. But it's just when we are avoiding the other layers or the other aspects that we could be looking at, that's when we're missing that opportunity that I think our body, our soul so badly is trying to show us.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, what we both were taught in this, you know, that that's all it wants. It just wants to help. It's just trying to help you. It's not trying to make your life difficult. And it's hard to see that a lot of times, but it's just when we stop for a second and actually listen to it. I think that's the thing. We never actually let ourselves do that so many times because we're going doctor's appointments. We're getting so distracted. And we're, you know, and I know for me, I'd be like on WebMD, you know, looking at all my symptoms. And I'm like, I have this, this, and this. And now I need to call all these specialists. And it's like, that didn't help anything. That made me feel 800 times worse. And also, again, like what we were saying, even more isolated too. And I think, you know, you get in that mindset too, where I know for me, I was also dealing with this thing where when people would say, oh, are you feeling better? Like, great. And I'd be like, F you, because I feel like, you know, if it's a chronic illness, like, yeah, I might feel good now, but I'm not going to feel good maybe tomorrow, and getting resentful of people just wanting to be helpful too. Again, all of those things are linked to something deeper that I wasn't paying attention to.
I love that you brought that up too, because that's another layer, is relational.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Connecting with other people and how this impacts your relationships.
Right.
And for me, oh my gosh, the level of guilt.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Shame, guilt, feeling, comparing to, jealousy even, and like, why can't they can do all this and I can't, you know, or whatever. Yeah.
I know. And shifting, which I actually think this is a good thing, but at the time it didn't feel like it, but shifting the course of your life, or shifting your definition or how your lifestyle is.
Right.
And making a conscious choice to do that. Like, I never would have chosen to leave my physical office ever. Never.
Oh, exactly. Right.
But you know how much it's helped me? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It helped me enormously. And it's because I decided my self-care needs to be my full-time job. And
Mhm.
at the time I thought, well, I'm just needy.
Mhm. Oh, totally.
You know what?
Totally.
It doesn't care how I judged it at the time.
Right. No. Yeah.
What matters is that I I make myself my top priority. And I
Yeah.
wasn't doing that. And this is what that calls us to do, is to make ourselves our top priority. We have a couple comments here.
Okay. Yeah.
Jenny says, I saw my second rheumatologist yesterday after I had much disappointment with the first one.
Mhm.
We're trying to keep me off of medicine and fix or adjust my issues primarily through changed eating habits, exercise, and proper sleep.
Mhm.
Love that. Good. That's super hopeful.
Yes.
I love that that's suggested for you. And then you
Yeah.
have to pay for a naturopath.
Yeah.
Kelly Rogers X says, I have FND, functional neurological disorder. I have
Okay.
so many doctors. I was physically unable to move for periods of time. I just had to be and sit back and trust my body will move again. Good.
Yeah.
Something I
Yeah.
had to lean into or I'd go crazy. The best was finding different energy pathways and modalities in order to have my nervous pathways to stay online. Yes!
That's amazing.
Because we have the ability to rewire our neurological system
Yeah.
entirely. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for sharing that. Deborah says, for 5 years, I told the doctor I don't feel well. I felt it was my thyroid. He said my thyroid numbers were fine. I kept having him check it. He told me I was getting older and I had just adopted a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I was 51. In 2008, I went to my MD and he said my thyroid numbers were fine. In November, I went to my gynecologist. He did blood work and said I needed to go to an endocrinologist. I went and had a sonogram on my thyroid and they found a growth and found out I had cancer and had a thyroidectomy in June of 2009. The doctors don't listen.
Nope. Yeah. Exactly.
Why? Just get noisy and go
Yeah.
to as many doctors as you
Yeah.
can.
You have to, because they'll easily shut you down. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's like what I was saying too. Just how they would say, well, you have a history of addiction, you're mentally ill. Bye. And that wasn't doing anything to help me at all. It would just make me feel worse.
Yeah. And she says that they gave her medication. They said she was depressed,
Yeah.
sensitive to medication. And it was even stronger for her on the lowest dose. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. My
Yeah.
body's very sensitive to it too. And I mean, if there's a side effect, I will have it. In fact,
Yeah.
years ago, I stopped looking at any side effects because I'm like, if I see them, I don't want reading them to put them in my subconscious mind in any way, shape,
Right.
or form and bring them forward because I'm so freaking sensitive that like
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up on this.
Right.
And Jenny says her biggest issue with being sick is having to cancel plans on family or friends.
Yeah, I totally understand that. There's a lot of guilt attached to that. And again, I think that's another thing though. This also really helped me face a lot of codependency stuff that I really did do a lot of work on. But it's such an important thing for just, I think, everybody. Because unfortunately, I think even just the US as a whole, there tends to be this idea of codependency that's almost encouraged sometimes, or
Oh,
like all the time, like even just stuff with like family members or something like that, where it's like, well, that's your family member and that's the way they are, so just you need to deal with it. And it's like, whenever I hear that, I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. But again, that's what this can be, such a wonderful opportunity to work on anything like that.
well, even in the mental health system.
Yeah.
Sorry, but there's a lot that's built for codependency in that system.
Really.
Much as I feel that therapy is helpful, it's only one layer.
Yeah.
It's only one layer. And I'm so thankful for this, despite myself, for my clients' sake, to be able to find this path.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, good, because I got sepsis, but can I save somebody else from getting that in a way, or be able to say, I'm going to share my experiences and help you realize, and myself at the time, that there is so much deeper levels of healing.
Yep.
And healing that's longer lasting.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, yes, the therapy helps, but again, it's a Band-Aid.
Yep.
I mean, some people, yes, it's not, and they can fix things and move forward. But for people with chronic issues,
Mhm.
it's a Band-Aid.
Oh, totally. I mean, it was that for me for years. I literally went to therapy for years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't even remember like any of it because it was that just separate from me.
Perfect.
I would talk about the same issues over and over again, whatever, and I would never act on them. I would never do anything. I would maybe feel like this temporary relief of like unloading some kind of stress, but But then I would go right back to how I was living.
Yeah.
It wasn't doing anything internal that was going to make some kind of major shift for me.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another comment here from Carrie. She says the impact on relationships has been one of the hardest things for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what kind of impact are you seeing, Carrie? Because there's also, it's important to understand from our perspective and from the other person in the relationship's perspective. Because I know
Exactly.
for me, like when I would feel guilt or anxiety, I would project that onto
Yep.
my husband or to other people
Mm-hmm.
and assume that they were feeling the same way when my husband's like, I don't care. Like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it was that I was bringing forward. But there were other things that I was like, it's fine. And he's like, okay, that frustrates me or whatever.
Yep.
So it's also just really open conversations about, this was also traumatic for my husband.
Oh, totally.
This
Right.
was also traumatic for my mother. This was, so considering our illness's impact on them and once again, co-creating,
Yep.
working together as a team and knowing that your illness is also their lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's important for all of us to realize that we all have something to learn from this.
Oh,
To
exactly.
move forward and be closer and have even more intimate relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think for me with like my fiance, like he's dealt with all of this with me too. And again, just like what you were saying, the biggest part of it is really just simple. It's just being open with each other and just explaining like, this is where I'm at. Is that okay with you? Because again, like I do the same thing that you were saying, where it's like, I always assume this stuff or like that this is a problem or, oh, they're definitely feeling this way. And they never really were. It's often when I'm thinking that way, it's often wrong because it's getting prompted from other symptoms even, or these other layers are giving this belief system to even like push people away or to cause that kind of stuff, that chaos, because that's where that's getting, driven from a lot of the time.
Yeah, Deborah asks us, then this is our last question, is at what point do you trust doctors or choose alternative medicine? So my answer there is going to be listen to your intuition. And if you need to expand it, then expand it through meditation or other energetic practices and tools. Because for me, it was, I listen to doctors when it is okay, so this is what I do. First of all, number one thing is life-saving, right? Like if it's life or death.
Right.
That's a situation, right? And I'm very thankful now. I'm no longer resentful.
Yeah, right.
Went through my forgiveness practices there. And that's another piece is forgiving yourself, forgiving others, forgiving God, forgiving doctors, etc. Anyway, so yeah, so I kind of got over myself with that. And I think that outside of like a life or death situation, it's all right, you go into a doctor's appointment as if you are gathering information to write a story. Okay. Right. Like you're taking like notes, like a court stenographer or something, right? And you're just writing down what they say and gathering the information. And it's a thank you very much. I so appreciate this. And then you bring it back home and you put it on your drawing board. And then you go to the other doctor and you put it on their drawing board. And then you take your intuition and what you feel like in your body, you put that on your drawing board. And you have all of it on the table. And then you pick what feels like is going to make you feel expansive, higher energy. You're going to be like, okay, this feels really good to me. And I'm not sure why. Like for me, when I did the Akashic Record certification program, I was like, logically, it made no sense. And I kept saying, nope, not for me. Nope, not for me. Yep. But intuition kept bringing me back to it. And I was like, finally, I just got sick of it, to be honest with you. I was like, oh my gosh, for some reason, this won't go away. I'm just going to sign up for it, whatever. And I really wasn't all in. I was just like, fine, whatever. I'm just signing up for this. And I'm so glad that I did, because obviously it was leading me on a path that I couldn't consciously see yet, right. And so those are the nudges that we get. And so I think it's important to take the information they give you. But like I've seen a few different naturopaths at this point. Right. And I'm like, well, this one I got this nugget from, this one I got this nugget from, this one I got this nugget from. It doesn't mean that, they were not helpful. It just gave me a piece to my puzzle. So that's how I would look at it, is it gives you the piece to your puzzle and then you use your intuition to kind of fill it in and complete it.
Yeah, and I think another thing to think about too is just that it doesn't have to be so kind of like all or nothing or this black and white thinking with it too. It doesn't have to be like, I'm done with doctors and I'm doing this. Or, I think the whole thing is the more help, the better. And, from all different types of sources. I think that's where you can get, again, I think that's also how you better cater to the many layers of this illness.
Yeah.
It's because from taking from a bunch of different people, a bunch of different types of people that can help you, and that you don't need to necessarily like shun one area or the other. But again, using that kind of more broader way of thinking and then allowing your intuition to be that guide for you is one of the best ways to go, I think, with that.
For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
So you guys who are here, we have a course coming up called Thrive. And
Ooh,
we're going to teach you about every single one of these layers. We're going to teach you
yeah.
how to heal at every single one of these layers. We're going to teach you how to clear and come to alignment in
Mhm.
each and every one of these layers for chronic illness, physical or emotional. It starts on October 29th and it runs for 7 weeks. We're going to be meeting on Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. It's on my website, so we're going to be putting the link here in the comments so that you guys can look into it. But if you are here tonight, there is something that has drawn you to this. And I encourage you to honor yourself by taking the next step forward, because I promise you, if you have physical symptoms, particularly chronic physical symptoms, you are experiencing them at every single energetic layer: physical, emotional, mental, etc., astral, keep going, right?
Right.
We're going to target every single one of these layers to help you find not only the core of what's going on with your physical or mental illness, right? What is the root here? Whether it's a belief system or it's past lives or it's ancestral healing or it's
Yeah.
something in this life or it's, you know, finding out what is the purpose of this? What is the lesson this is bringing forward? And how can I create a roadmap to move forward to wellness and vitality?
Yeah, yeah, and seeing this as a way to just empower you and
Right.
understand it as finally kind of coming out on the other side of it and seeing where that's leading you and why it's in your life, as opposed to it just constantly kind of holding you back.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I am achieving things now that
Yeah.
I didn't know that I'd be this well this soon. You know,
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
knew I had hope for myself, but I didn't know I'd be this well this soon. And that other parts of me, like my confidence, my anxiety, never would be so resolved. And I'd honestly feel better emotionally and energetically than I've ever felt in my entire life,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy, right? It's so crazy. And so we are both here to guide you through that process so that you do have somebody to advocate and hold your hand. We're
Right.
going to help you have that voice. We're going to help you with your relationships and finding harmony in those. We're going to help you with that root cause, right? That core issue that's presenting, and learning how to make this empower you, because
Right.
it already is empowering you at an energetic level. You just don't necessarily feel it
Right.
yet.
Right. Yeah, to be able to just understand yourself in a way that you've never even been able to before. I mean, that's again, like for me, that's just one of the biggest shifts, and the thing that really was given to me from this was just that, I mean, I'll tell you right now, right before I got sober too, like I had accepted that I was going to die by the time I was about 23. And
Wow.
I was completely fine with it. That was like, I was like, that's my story. That's what this is. That's my path. I had no idea that that would shift into where I am now. And, at the time, like I was using all these other external things to try to figure out who I was. I thought I needed other people to enhance who I was, to make me understand these things. And once spirit was introduced into my life, and just so many pieces got put together in a way that I never would have understood before and empowered me. And now it's like, I don't need any of that. It was just like, I don't need any of that. And I thought I needed so many supplemental things to enhance who I was, make me feel whole, make me feel like I had everything figured out. And I was just going in the opposite direction. And so it's an amazing opportunity to be able to give that to yourself and to show yourself that it doesn't have to be that kind of situation at all. And it really isn't. It's just in disguise, really.
Yeah, and the fact that accessing spirit, I mean, divine intelligence, infinite energy,
Yeah. Yeah,
like
it energizes me more than anything any drug I've ever tried.
you.
It doesn't compare to anything.
I tell people, like, I enter the Akashic records, I connect with spirit. That's my energy boost. Like, some
Oh,
people,
yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't had caffeine in like 25 years.
right.
It seriously energizes me and makes me feel like it's an endless, infinite tap
Yep, yep.
into an energy source.
Mhm.
And it's such a loving and compassionate and gentle approach too. So that you're never going to get any kind of feedback or guidance that you're not ready to integrate. So you don't have to worry about, is this going to make me unstable? Because that was my fear at the beginning too.
Yeah.
I was so sensitive. I was like, is this going to make me unstable? That you're never going to be given anything that you can't handle.
Oh yeah. No, spirit just, yeah. Spirit knows you at a cellular level that like you'll never even understand, and that we can't even understand, and that's fine. But that's why like we can actually trust them. And I think again, that's just why it's going through that process of understanding that you can trust it, understanding that you can allow it to hold you in that space. And that it's going to guide you exactly where you need to be, and it's going to give you exactly what you need at that time. It's just a matter of allowing yourself to just see that happen and unfold for you.
It also gives you clarity because, you're bringing this information through spirit
Mhm.
that created you, that
Right.
created the planet, that created the illness you have,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
created everything, our universe.
Right.
And so tapping into that not only helps you understand your own, unique blueprint
Yeah.
and how and why this is showing up now, but it offers you a greater opportunity for intimacy with knowing yourself and with knowing spirit and with being able to tune in going forward for anything that shows up, so that you have this direct line and you can tap in at any time, and you don't have to sit there and be confused about, should I go with this doctor or this route or this route or this route? You just ask.
Mhm.
And the answer is given. Oh, there's that book, Asking It Is Given by Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
But it's true. You just have to ask.
Mhm.
And we so often just forget to ask. I mean, even me as a spiritual
Oh
entrepreneur and
yeah.
a spiritual teacher and healer, I'm tapped in all the time. There are times when I get stuck in my human and I forget to ask. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I can just go to the records.
Yeah. Right. I know. I do the same thing. Yeah.
And that's where being in a program or connecting with a coach or a mentor
Yeah.
can be very helpful.
Right.
It does hold you accountable to remind you, because what we're doing is retraining ourselves, right? We're
Yep.
retraining our brains, we're retraining our systems. And so it's like continuing to remind you, this is your resource, this is your go-to. Like for me, I have a lot of leg pain with my
Yeah.
neuropathy.
Yeah.
It's getting less and less and less. But I started to notice that when my left heel starts to hurt,
Mhm.
that was a sign that I needed to sit down, because then it would start to radiate up my legs. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a sign I sit down. Then I started to notice that when I started feeling like, oh, I don't want to play with the kids anymore, which
Mm.
usually when I would have that thought, I would just start to feel guilty and bad about myself and beat myself up. But
Yeah.
instead, I realized that when I get that feeling, it was because I needed to sit down, because I
Yeah.
would get that feeling right before my heel would start to hurt. So
Mhm.
then I started catching it earlier. And then when I got that feeling, I'm like, I need to lay down. So I started to prevent the physical symptoms.
Yeah.
And the more that you trace back and get more and more in tune with the nuances of the energy, you get to catch it sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner. And that just comes with practice. Like the more
Oh,
that you practice and engage with the energy and adjust your frequency, you'll catch it sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner over time, to the point where you're like, oh, wow, I'm pretty good.
oh yeah. Yeah. It's just this, it's a relationship between you and your body, and understanding that. And I've been going through the same thing of just, for me, I know now, like, well, one of the biggest things, which seems like really simple, but to me, I started to learn that mental energy, expending mental energy, was just as sometimes harmful for me as expending physical energy. And I didn't even think that at the time, so when I really overdo it, like with just researching stuff or whatever I might be doing, even talking to people on the phone or something, sometimes that would exhaust me. And I wasn't like thinking, because I'm like, well, if I'm sitting down, then it's not gonna do that. And also seeing that often then would start leading to muscle spasms, which tends to be something I get, and it would be all over my body. And again, I would ignore that. But now I've learned that when I'm getting that, it means I need to lie down. And then usually I can do things when I do that, because that was my thing. I'm just so used to pushing right through that and not paying attention to it. And I mean, and that comes from, especially too, just with addiction and everything, I treated my body like this separate entity from me for so long. And that's why I think, just like what you were saying, just needing something to remind you. And again, knowing, because that was kind of my conditioning for so many years. So yeah, it's not going to be natural for me to be like, oh, okay, that's what my body's telling me. Let me do this. It doesn't come natural for me. It doesn't. But that's why being, linked into a community that understands that stuff, that can help encourage that can hold that space for you to learn that new neural pathway that we were talking about, to build in there. And then it starts to become less and less effort on your part to really do that. It doesn't become so difficult or challenging and something that you have to like nail into your brain to do.
I promise you, that's one of the things that I was really resistant to, was like, affirmations or like this,
right.
The repeat affirmations or gratitude. What the hell is that going to do, right? And it was just because I didn't want to do it, and it was just because I wasn't patient enough to want to like stick with it for a period of time, because
you get frustrated. It's like, I want instant, I want to feel good now,
I wanted to feel good right then. And that's the problem. Like, I was entering it with desperate energy, but thank goodness I still stuck with it. And it's true that it just becomes automatic. You don't have to think, and it just happens. Like, I literally did a live on loneliness. So this was, of course, an emotional one, but I did a live on loneliness. I suffered from chronic feelings of loneliness. And I did a live on it months and months ago, and realized when I was on the live that I hadn't experienced loneliness in at least 6 months or 8 months. I was like, oh, wait, this is interesting. Like, this is gone. And that's how it kind of shows up, is like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I've been able to like go on 3 walks a week, and I've been able to eat this and I've been able to do that.
It creeps up on you.
And you're like, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm actually doing a lot better, And because a lot of this work, this energy work, is under the surface, it's like at that molecular, microscopic, even tinier than microscopic level. It's in molecules that we're shifting.
And I mean, and not even like, that's exactly what happened to me too. I just remember like the first time I actually felt true sobriety, I remember for such a long time, I was expecting to get like struck by like a bolt of lightning or something, to have this unbelievable, spiritual experience. Cause I'd hear some people talk about something like that, and I'd be like, like, hit me, with something. And my sponsor, who was this amazing woman, and she just said, like, you're treating that like a drug. And I was like, oh, and then I remember I was just walking by myself one day, and this was after doing some work in the program and doing work on myself. And I was just like, whoa, I feel really different, but it's good. It feels weird, but it's a good weird. And again, and that's the thing. I never had that experience where it was like the earth shook and I was like, oh my God, it was really subtle. But then over time it built up. And that's also, though, that's what gives you that foundation. It's like anything that's instant is not going to last. It feels great. I mean, it's just like drugs. I mean, just like what I did for so many years. Yeah, it feels good for about an hour, and then it goes away. And that's why it's just, if you allow yourself to give yourself that opportunity to be slow with the process, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
And you're recovering anyway. Like, you're in like recovery mode anyway.
Right, exactly. So what are you, why not?
It's going to take a while anyway. And so why take a while for a Band-Aid?
Exactly.
Take a while for the really deep, long-lasting healing. So I just put the link in the comments for you guys. You can check out the link to the course. The pay in full price is $917. It starts $1029. It's 7 weeks long. We're going to be off the week of Thanksgiving here in the US. And it's going to be held on Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. We are available if you guys have any questions about this program. There's a lot of information at that link. So definitely read up on that and get some understanding about, what you're going to be experiencing over the course of this program, and what kind of relief you're going to have, because that is something that I promise you will have, is some relief at the end of this program, for sure. And it's just, honestly, it's a gift for us to be able to offer this to you. It's a gift to yourself to choose this and choose to know yourself this intimately, to love yourself this intimately and feel deserving to choose a program. I almost went to the 6-week program, 6-week inpatient program. I'm sorry, it was a 3-week inpatient program in Texas to help with my neurological symptoms. And that would have been $30,000 for me to go to. So like for me, I would have loved to have a course like this.
Yeah, right.
You know, to be able to say like, it's so worth it. You know, it's a drop in the bucket compared to a lifetime of healing and wellness and vitality. So, so please touch base with us if you have questions about it. There are payment plans available. The payment plan is $337 a month for 3 months. And there's also a VIP option where you get a reading with me and Daisy. I'm an Akashic therapist. She's a psychic medium and healer. And the two of us together,
it's really cool.
I know. I mean, it's just so naturally unfolded between the two of us. And it's just so powerful intuitively. We play off of each other, and the wisdom that comes through is slam dunk aha every single time. So so if you upgrade to VIP, you can do that as well and meet with us for a session and just deep dive really into your specific symptoms or areas where you're struggling or have questions. So
kind of infuse you with an extra boost in this program with everything, and to just really, I'm just so excited.
Me too. I'm so,
Yay.
It's been aligned for a couple months. And we've just been following the energy in terms of bringing it forward to you guys. And I'm just very thankful that you're here today listening or on the replay, and that we have been offered this opportunity by the universe, that you're being offered this opportunity if you're here listening to this. So definitely touch base with us. Let us know if you have questions, concerns, or beauty tips. And we will see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.